Let's talk about how to use storytelling in your content to drive more sales into your business. Because we're living in an era right now where information is a commodity. There are so many experts, business owners, coaches, brands, entrepreneurs that are putting out information on the internet. They're sharing tips and insights and valuable stuff out there, and they're teaching and trying to educate their audience, but it's so commoditized. In fact, I think the last statistic I saw was there was like 615 million posts being published every minute on the internet, which is nuts, right? It's insane to me, but it's reality. And so if we're just teaching at our audience, or we're just trying to post the same kinds of content as everybody else, our audience isn't perceiving it as valuable as they once did, because what becomes commoditized becomes less valuable, at least perceived valuable. Plus, we end up putting out great stuff or putting time into creating content and marketing, but it often goes ignored. I see so many people that create these like badass lead magnets. You know, they come up with these PDFs and these ebooks and these trainings and all of this stuff, and then nobody wants their stuff. You know, or they're getting a lot of the wrong people in their stuff. And so what I'm going to do today is show you how to use storytelling to be able to, number one, connect with your audience more. To be able to like really dive into the emotional aspects of things. To be able to make your content stand out. To make you stand out as different than everybody else. Because when you use story correctly, it allows you to do that. And then number three, how to bridge the gap in what you're teaching. So if you are teaching things to people, story is the way to bridge the gap and get them to shift their perspectives, to be able to see what you're talking about as different, as unique, and to provide them hope and be able to connect with them on a deep level. And this is what starts to move people into the next process in your funnel. So whether that's you wanting to get more people in your DMs, or you want to get more people on calls, or you want to move people to a sales page, whatever it is for you, I'm going to show you how to do that today with storytelling. So let's go ahead and dive on in. And if you want this document I'm about to share, I'm sure I'll have it linked below where you can grab it for free. Now, first, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room, my friend. People do not connect to facts. They connect to story. And that is a fact. You see, as we just alluded to, information's a commodity. People are spitting out facts, teaching, blah, 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 all over the place, and people don't connect to that. Maybe that makes you feel smart, or you seem smart, but your audience feels dumb. And anybody that feels dumb or stupid, they're not going to want to buy from you. So we want to be able to connect your content, connect what you're teaching, because a lot of times for them, it's going to be a new thing. It's going to be a new topic or a new belief that we're trying to implant into them. And we got to relate it to something that they understand. And this is where using metaphors, analogies, and story will help connect those dots for people. So this is what's going to keep our audience listening. So again, we want to make your audience feel smart. This is one of the secrets of good storytelling, is making people understand it, making people be able to relate to what you're talking about. It's going to keep their attention because story is completely freaking different. Like, I remember the first time that I really figured out like the power of storytelling is when I was getting on American Ninja Warrior. And one of the things that you do to get on the show is you have to submit an application and a 3-minute video. And the video has to demonstrate, wait for it, your skills, of course, right? You can't like suck at being that Ninja Warrior and like expect to be on the show. Your energy, you gotta have like, it's Hollywood, right? You gotta have good energy. And story. And I remember talking to the producers and like really understanding the power of good story when I was creating those videos for American Ninja Warrior. So this helps keep attention, get attention, and keeps attention. And it allows you to shift people's perspectives, okay? It gets people to see things differently, and this is the real win when you get people to see your way of doing things, your beliefs, and this is what moves people forward. So here's how to make storytelling work for you, and we'll go over some examples. You want to meet your audience at their level of awareness. So when you're choosing to tell a story, a lot of times you sharing a personal story or a client case study story or using a metaphor. So for example, say you're in weight loss, right? And you're trying to like teach people the concept of how eating less and cutting out their carbs and going on stupid diets and all of this stuff is hurting them. Again, that's facts, and people don't connect to the facts. It logically makes sense, but it's not hitting them emotionally. And so oftentimes what I would do is I would talk when I was in the fitness space, I would talk about how, like, imagine going on a road trip with your family, and before you hit the highway on this 10-hour road trip, you stop at the gas station, and instead of filling up your tank, you put $5 in gas in the tank. Like, how far do you think that's gonna take you before you run out of gas? And people now will be like, oh, like they'll connect to a time that they took their family on a road trip or they went on a road trip, and it makes sense and it brings emotion into there, you know? Or I could go the opposite direction and I could have talked about an actual personal story. I could have connected them to like, man, I remember being at my fire station back when I was a firefighter, and I was freaking eating cans of tuna, running around my fire station like a madman, and I remember just being so miserable. And so I could bring people into a story of like when I discovered that like eating too little was detrimental to my health and how I was feeling like crap and deflated and how I wasn't actually getting great results. You see? And so you want to make it relatable and bring it in to people. Again, the golden rule in video or content, not even just video, but content in general, even if you're writing, is don't be boring. So that's part of what makes your content different, because nobody can copy your stories, right? People might be able to copy what you do, but they can't copy your stories. And that's what makes you different. And it makes it fun. And what's familiar to them in their world that they can relate to. So me sharing a story or an analogy about going on a road trip and, you know, putting $5 in gas, that's relatable if I'm speaking to my audience of parents, of people that would go on road trips with their family, right? What you don't want to do is try to use an analogy or a metaphor or story that's completely left field that nobody can relate to. Like, you know, back in 1929, there was this guy named Albert and like just making up some like people won't understand. Like, so if you're like a history nerd and your audience aren't history nerds, they're not going to understand. So you want to stay away from stories like that. Seems like common sense, but I've seen it all. Okay, and again, we want to shift beliefs in when we're teaching our content, right? So I do this a lot of times. I'm teaching people like you should focus more on your messaging, like the words that you're saying. You want to say the right words in the right way to the right people, and then plug those words into strategic content. And so when I'm trying to get people to understand the importance and the concepts of having really good messaging and how that actually generates you more inbound leads, gets you the right engagement, and is the secret to making any marketing work, instead of me just telling that as like a fact, that is the truth, that is a fact, I'm going to talk about examples and stories. I'll share a personal story about how I figured this out or how I came to it, you know, or I could say a simple analogy. I could say, hey, imagine going to China and you speak English and you're trying to order Chinese food in English. It's going to be a frustrating experience because they don't understand what you're saying and you don't understand what they're saying. And so you're probably not going to get the right order or even get the Chinese food, period. But imagine if you studied up and you learned a little Chinese. Then you went over to China and ordered Chinese food. Like, you're going to get what you want. They're going to be happy. You're happy. Everybody's happy. That's the power of messaging. So when you say the right words in the right way to the right people, you get the right people engaging and you get more inbound DMs when you put in the content. So that's me sharing something that allows people to be like, oh shit, that makes sense. Versus me just spitting facts, right? So you see how that is? So the goal here is we want to be able to shift people's beliefs. We want to be able to shift people's perspectives, not just teach at them. And then when we use a common metaphor, an analogy, or story, it also creates a fun atmosphere that allows our audience to connect with our content. So here's how I want you to think through this. I want you, so we can start putting this into practice, think about a current belief, a problem or symptom that people are experiencing, or an action they're taking now to try to solve the problem that they're in. And I want you to think about one metaphor, one analogy, or one personal story, or even a client story, to help them shift their beliefs into your new belief, problem, solution, and action. So let's go ahead and, we'll use a quick example here so you can see. We will use, I'll use a weight loss example because I feel like that's relatively universal. Everybody can get that. So let's imagine somebody has 20 pounds, they're 20 pounds overweight and they're trying to figure out how to get this 20 pounds overweight. They believe that they should be dieting, that perhaps it might be their genetics, that they're not really sure what to do. So they're going out there and they're trying different diets. They're, trying what their friends are telling them to do. Maybe they're on keto, blah, 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 right? They're on things. And so problem, they're overweight. Symptoms, they're overweight. Belief, I think I got a diet. Maybe it's my genetics. I'm not sure what's going on. And then actions are, let me go try the diet. Let me cut out my carbs. Let me do what, my friends are doing. You see? And so I want them to believe that to be able to lose that 20 pounds, they have to learn how to eat right. not just healthy, they have to learn how to dial in their calories and eat right. And then if they eat right and build out, let's say, a flexible nutrition plan, they'll be able to do it in a sustainable way, and they'll be able to lose that fat. And so you see, we take the different components here, and now I'm going to think about what is a metaphor, analogy, or story that I can use to bridge the gap. And so an example here, I gave the gas station one. That's a great example for somebody that is kind of stuck in that belief. I might just go through and talk about a client story or a personal story. So in this example, since I've already kind of hit on the personal story a little bit and the metaphors, let's pretend I was telling a client story. I could be like, hey, so I remember when my client Holly first came to me, she was beating her head against the wall. She was so freaking frustrated because she was like, Jason, dude, I've tried everything. And she started to list off all of the diets she's tried. She's like, I've hired personal trainers. I've done it all. And I'm beginning to think that it might be my genetics. Or maybe I just haven't found the right diet to go on. All she wanted was to be able to go on the boat with her husband, be able to wear an actual bathing suit. She didn't need a bikini, just a bathing suit, and feel good in her skin. And she just wanted to feel confident, feel good, and not have to not eat at the dinner table with her family. She just wanted to be normal and feel good in her body. And so fast forward about 3 months or so, we helped set her up with what we call a flex fuel nutrition plan. We helped her start to do progressive strength training so she can build that lean muscle that shed her fat, shed her fat out. And then we helped her make sure she set up her calories. So she was eating the right amount of calories. She dialed in her calories. She was eating the right proportions, and she got foods that were sustainable and that helped optimize her hormones and her metabolism so she continued to shed fat. So you see, what I'm doing there is I would obviously go way more into depth with the story. I want to bring in as many details and make it multi-sensory. So we're really diving into emotions, but just show you the concept here. We're bringing people in, and then you're sharing bits and pieces, right? Our goal here is we want to shift people's perspective on oh my God, I got to eat right. I got to eat flexibly, or whatever it is that you're trying to get them to believe and do. And therefore, once you do that, now people are like, well, crap, I feel like I am like Holly. How can I do that too? And that's where you're going to get people to reach out to you and to be like, hey, I read your piece of content on Holly, or I watched the video you did on Holly. How can I, how do I dial in my calories in? Right? You'll start getting these types of questions. So this is really, really key. And so these are just a couple of quick notes in here. So here's what I want you to do to kind of get this started. I want you to think about a complex idea. And little spoiler, what's simple to you may be complex to other people. Like when I talk about messaging, it's so freaking simple to me, but it's complex to a lot of people because we get in our heads. And so, calories in your body is a complex topic for a lot of people. Building lean muscle is a complex topic. Leads, to me, that's so easy to get leads. But for a lot of business owners, it's complex. These are complex ideas for them. You see? And so whatever it is for you, think about one or two that you want to do in your next pieces of content. And I want you to think about a simple metaphor, analogy, or story. And it could be a personal story, a client story, whatever. It could friggin' be a parable that you could use to be able to bridge the gap and to be able to talk through it to bring people in. Does that make sense? So you get the idea. Relate anything you talk about to something your audience already understands and they can agree with you on, right? Use symbolism and analogies to get them to easily start to make sense of your marketing message. And once you have them starting to see your point of view and it makes sense to them, then they start seeing your solution as a logical choice. So write down at least 3 metaphors, analogies, or stories to get started that you can use in your content. And this is something that I give inside of our paid programs, so you won't have access to this unless you're in our paid programs. And then practice using a metaphor or analogy or story in your next shift belief post or a strategic live that you do. And here's some cool resources if you want to learn. There's different analogy books. I have links down here, different story books and things like that I've read over the years that have just helped me sharpen the skill. But just the last point I want to leave here with you. While you're using story in your content, the most important thing that I can give to you, or the most important kind of takeaway I can give to you, outside of what I just gave, is make it multi-sensory. Bring people into the experience. Don't just talk through the story super boring and mundane. Again, the golden rule, don't be boring. Bring people into it. And then as many multi-sensory, right? How can you get people to feel, see, taste, smell, bring them in as much as possible, whether it's your story, a client's story, and then obviously with metaphors and analogies, the intention there is to be able to get people to relate and see things your way. So I hope you found this really, really helpful. And if you did, make sure to click subscribe and leave a comment down below and let me know what was the most insightful thing for you. And if you have any questions on this, let me know. Drop down below. As always, remember, your message matters now more than it ever has before. Don't be afraid to speak it. As always, be seen, be heard, and be impactful.